Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Most of the advice in this series of what I call doables, kind of baby steps, practical advice for the real world, has been consistent with conventional wisdom. But this installment, which is on your child in college, is not conventional wisdom. So you might want to take this advice as merely just a contrarian perspective. The first point I want to make is that more students should defer or forego college. Yes, students who did well in high school, like a B+ average or higher, a 1200 or more SAT, who aren't burned out on school, nor are burning to do something like start a business, probably should go to college. But even some students with a strong high school record would do well to accept the liabilities of not following the crowd to college. Yes, when their friends and yours are asking, well, which college is your child going to? There's the embarrassment of saying, well, she's doing an apprenticeship or taking some time to explore the world outside of the classroom. And yes, if the child later decides to go to college, there's the liability of being older than the typical freshman. But those liabilities are often more than compensated for by one or more of these. First, there's the dropout risk. If your child is sick of school, going straight to college makes him or her more likely to be among the 60% who don't graduate in 4 years, or at least the 40% who don't graduate even if given 6 years, with those last 2 years typically being with minimal financial aid. Then there's the risk of little learning. The average college student grows shockingly little in the core critical areas of critical thinking and writing. Those were the two subjects that were tested in the landmark nationwide study Academically Adrift. Then there's substance abuse risk. At many colleges, alcohol and drug use and abuse is common, and that's because it's a perfect storm. That is, college is a perfect storm of kids away from home for the first time, living together in dorms with minimal supervision, taking courses from professors who may be piling on lots of often uninteresting and stressful work. And if your child wasn't a great student in high school and isn't unduly motivated to do yet harder academics, it's easy to see why college can, ironically, be a spawning ground for a drug or alcohol problem at a point in your child's life when his or her brain isn't fully formed and therefore is more vulnerable. Then there's the opportunity cost. Many young adults benefit from and enjoy a semester or more away from academia. And finally, there's the risk of narrowed thinking. Academia's traditional role as a marketplace of ideas has often given way to the teaching mainly of a liberal orthodoxy. For example, socialism good, capitalism bad. Minorities and women good, white males bad. Redistribution good, meritocracy bad. Like many observers, I believe that wisdom resides across the ideological spectrum, but on too many campuses, students are mainly exposed to the left side of that spectrum. Of course, the case against college is strongest if your child didn't do well in high school. With grade inflation, which is rampant, that typically means a 3.2 or less GPA and an SAT score of under 1,100. I want to talk about community college. It's for many students, including good students, a fine option. Sure, if your child can get into a designer label college like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, MIT, or Caltech, unless your kid is at risk of burning out, your child should probably attend. Spending 4 formative years around the best and brightest with a door-opening diploma as a going-away present should rarely be turned down. Additionally, in such universities' favor is that they're inordinately wealthy, and so they can give lots of cash financial aid, if only because they know that over the grateful student's lifetime, those institutions' relentless pitches for donations will yield plenty of payback. Alas, much of the public doesn't realize that universities acquired their prestige not mainly from the quality of undergraduate education, but because of their research productivity. And research productivity comes from hiring and promoting faculty heavily on their research, which usually is on an arcane, narrow topic far removed from what undergraduates need to know. And then the researcher's skill set and motivations are often very different from those needed to be a good undergraduate teacher. That's why teaching at a community college tends to be better on average. There, hiring and promotions based far more on teaching performance. So, you'll likely learn more for far less money at a community college. And Most community colleges have the full range of extracurricular activities, which you'll have more time for because you may not need to study so hard to learn university's harder, often more poorly taught material. What about community colleges usually not having residence halls? As I mentioned, dorms are too often hothouses for behaviors that many parents wouldn't be pleased about. It's often wise for a child to spend their first post-high school year or two living at home, even if there weren't a cost saving, which there is. One more contrarian option I believe in is to consider choosing a college other than the most selective one possible. Most college-bound students end up choosing the most selective college that admits them. For example, SUNY Binghamton rather than SUNY Oswego, UC Berkeley rather than Sonoma State. Yet the difference in prestige and student quality is, for some students, outweighed by too great a difference in workload, stress, and the often necessary sacrifice in extracurricular life, which can be often at least as valuable as academic learning. Now I want to talk about a few alternatives to going to college, or at least going straight to college. If your child is more of a concrete learner than an abstract learner, is more career-oriented than enjoying learning for learning's sake, your child would likely do poorly in college's vaunted liberal arts courses, which are required in quantity even for non-liberal arts majors, for example, business, engineering, or nursing. In contrast, apprenticeship is an under-considered option, especially by parents who are college graduates. For more information on this, what I call earn while you learn and get credentialed option, you might want to see the federal government's apprenticeship site, which I think is just apprenticeship.gov. There's a small percentage of students, one more non-college option for the high school students, high school graduates. A small percentage of students are self-starters who, with just modest assistance, are able to start a business. And even if it fails, the amount of learning that comes from that can be enormous. Or they have the moxie to talk their way, maybe with your help, into a career launchpad job. Maybe working for one of your successful ethical friends or relatives. Now, many students and parents resist the arguments I've just made. The following dialogue between a counselor and a teenager may offer some language that you as a parent might want to use with your child. The child starts by saying, "But I worked so hard in school, in high school. Now you're asking me to consider going to a less prestigious college than I could get into, let alone a community college or an apprenticeship? I'd be so embarrassed to tell my friends." The counselor says, "I can understand. The question is whether it's worth going along with the crowd, even when that's not in your best interest." The child says, "But it is in my interest to go to a good college. If I go to, like, UC Davis, I'll be with smarter kids and get a useful diploma. If I go to a community college or do an apprenticeship, I'll get some crappy job. I don't want to be a plumber." The counselor says, "Do know that if I filled a room with 100 students with your high school record and half went to UC Davis and half started at a community college or did an apprenticeship, the latter group would likely, on average, be happier and more successful and have saved a fortune." The child says, "How can that be?" "That's because more than half of students with your high school record end up dropping out of college, having learned little, not acquired an employable skill, let alone an employability credential, and with damaged self-esteem and a mountain of debt." In contrast, students at a community college are likely to have learned more because, unlike at a university, the instructors are hired on how well they teach, not on how much esoteric research they do. And in an apprenticeship, you prepare for a career at the elbow of a master, plus some practical courses at a community college. You finish your apprenticeship likely to have a good career, and it certainly doesn't have to be plumbing. Apprenticeships can prepare you for everything from robot technician to chef to land surveyor. The child says, "I'll think about it." The counselor says, "That's all I could ask. I know how hard it is, especially for a teenager to not follow the crowd." Now I want to end this perhaps too long little lecture on the procrastinating college applicant. Parents are often frustrated that their child is taking a lackadaisical approach toward choosing and applying to college. That can reflect a child's rational or emotional concerns, which should be discussed, but those go beyond the scope of this already long little talk, not so little talk. Anyway, the following dialogue addresses the common situation in which the child procrastinates choosing and applying to college just because it's a long, difficult task. The parent starts by saying, Everyone's already applying for college. You've hardly even done any research on where you want to apply. The kid says, leave me alone. I'm on it. Parent says, the deadlines are coming up. I'm on it. At least can we spend a little time together searching CAPEX to find well-suited colleges? CAPEX is a really good website, CAPPEX. Child says, whatever. For now, we're going to assume that by reviewing CAPEX and the Princeton Review's book, The Best 385 Colleges, and the college counselor's input and so on, the child has selected the colleges to apply to. And the parent continues and asks, have you done your essays yet? Child says, have you filled out the financial aid forms yet? Parent says, I'm working on it. Your deadline is sooner. Do you know what you want to write your essay about? Child says, I hear that if you write about some adversity you faced, that works. Parent says, rather than pandering to that, writing your essay can be a good tool for better understanding yourself. Most essays reduce to just one question. What's something important about you that isn't obvious in the rest of your application? Child says, I don't know, I'm just like most kids. Parent says, everyone's different. What's something you've done that came out well and in which you enjoyed the process? Child says, well, I guess building that rocket, even though one time it started a fire in the backyard. Parent says, great. You were very persistent, trying experiment after experiment to see how high you could make the rocket fly. That would be an essay topic that would reveal something important about you, something you could honestly write about without pandering, yet it would increase your admissibility. Would you write a first draft of that, and if you like, I'll review it after? Child says, I'll see. As parents face the uncertainty, kids face the peer pressure, parents face some peer pressure, the parent-child arguments, and the looming empty nest syndrome, anxiety can reign. Although many of this little talks, again, not so little talks, ideas are not standard and therefore probably contribute to stress, at least in the short term, I believe that if you fair-mindedly consider these ideas, your child and you will, in the long run, be the better for it. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. Feel free to give this a thumbs up, or if needed, a thumbs down, to hit the share button and share on your social media, and your comments. And also, of course, I welcome your subscribing to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.